Hey, thanks for joining me for another interview on the Agape Investing channel. Today I'll be talking with Shaunté Saphire. Shaunté is a life and business coach as well as a motivational speaker who has helped thousands of women across the world to find their God-given purposes and overcome the fears and limitations that they're facing. In this conversation, we discuss how 2020 has just been a crazy and challenging year for a lot of us, and how we can't let those challenges stop us from continuing to pursue our God-given purposes and callings. Shaunté shares with us some practical tips on how we can continue to push through the challenges and really just achieve our goals as well as our God-given purposes. All right. Hello, Shaunté. Thanks for being with me today.
Hi, Katie. I'm really excited to be here. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, I'm really excited. I found you on Instagram and knew that the content that you were providing people was so important and wanted to share what you're doing and how you're helping other believers out there in their businesses as well as their personal lives. So if you want to give us maybe a little intro on who you are, what you're doing, and what you're all about.
Okay, of course. So, my name is Shaunté Saphire. I am a life and business coach, and I am also a podcast host. I host the Pray Plan Slave podcast, which is currently being listened to in 63 countries around six
Oh my
continents.
gosh.
So, I was amazed at how God moved in that way. But we really talk about things like faith and your purpose and how to really become the person that God intended you to be. And that's something that I'm able to do in all facets of my business. I do it in my podcast by way of interviewing people or offering free advice through the online platform of the podcast. Then I do life coaching and business coaching. And as I was saying, Katie, this year, it's been quite a different year. It's the
Yeah.
year that is on nobody's vision board. When we sat in December or January and we wrote what we thought 2020 was going to be, nobody thought pandemic. If somebody thought
Definitely.
that, I want to know that. But nobody thought that there was going to be a pandemic this year. And I think what it really did was throw a wrench in a lot of people's plans. But what I've come to realize, especially for myself and the clients that I deal with, is that it's actually put us in a place where we need it to be so we can get to where we're going. And although a lot of people I've heard people say, they're ready, they want a refund on 2020, they're ready to cancel their 2020. Can we just skip to January 2021? As if January can come and there has to be a change because it's the first of the year. But that's not necessarily true. There doesn't have to be a change until God says it's time for a change. So
Yes.
how can we then utilize this time, this place where we're in, to really get a grasp and an understanding on who God has created us to be, so that we can show up better in our lives and show up better in our business?
Yeah.
Because we are supposed to be thriving, but it's just really how we look at it, what our perspective is. Are we going to be glass half full type of people, or are we going to be glass half empty? How are we going to view our situation, and how are we going to become better because of it?
Yeah. Man, I mean, honestly, that is just so true. Even like in my own life, like just everything with 2020, it's like my husband and I are huge planners. We love to like sit down and kind of plan out our whole year. We have kind of like this vision meeting at the beginning, kind of like the first week of January. What are we going to do? We talk about our vacations, our big
Yeah.
goals, things like that. And we were just reevaluating the other day, and we're like, we really are only on track and really can only possibly now achieve one of our big goals, like one of our top 3 things that we were planning on doing this year. One of them is still relatively possible, but one of them was also, we were planning a huge vacation. And
Yeah.
man, God just with this year has really said, trust me, follow me, you need to be flexible. So how are you helping people maybe individually as well as in their businesses? 'Cause I know you do both personal and business coaching. How are you helping them to kind of take this year and almost like view it from God's perspective, in this
Yeah.
idea of like, we have to be flexible, We have to be trusting. How are you helping people through that right now?
Yeah. So I love the word flexible because that's really what this year is all about.
Mhm.
And I remember my bishop always says, "Blessed are the flexible because they don't easily get bent out of shape." And I really like when he says that, and it stuck with me because we have to learn, especially as people who like to plan. I am a big planner. I love planning.
Mhm.
I love, like, I will have my whole year planned out, and then something goes wrong. You're just like, hey, not on the plan. So I completely understand that from somebody who loves to plan, who did that, who has a vision board. But I also have to remind people, especially faithpreneurs, as I like to refer to them on my podcast,
I like that.
of thank you. Of what it means to be a faithpreneur, what it means when God is the CEO of your business. If
Yeah.
He has said certain promises to you, how do you shift from just seeing the promises with your own eyes because it looks like, hey, God promised me that my business would do such and such, maybe in profit this year, and I can see it because last year we did this, so this year's I'm going to double. How do you change your mindset to say, I can't see it, God, but you promised me? The Bible says that God is not a man that he should lie. He's not human like the rest of us, so he doesn't lie. So how do we then shift and rely on the promises even when we don't see it in front of us? And I think that's really the main thing that I'm working with when it comes to those who have businesses, to really go back to God and make sure that you are following his vision for you and your business in the right way, and then utilizing what he is advising you to do. Because a lot of times people will say things like, we're in a pandemic, this is not the right thing to sell. Let's say if you offer a service, but
Mhm.
that's not true. There's something that you're offering that is needed in this world, that it's needed in this specific time. For example, life coaching. I think out of all the years that I've been a life coach, this year has been the most important year for people requiring a life coach. So don't shy away and listen to the voices that are going on the outside. It's really important for you to tune in on God and basically to do it, and do it afraid. I know that people in business, in the world's eyes, may be saying, no, 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 you need to do X, Y, and Z. And God may be saying, no, I want you to do one thing, but you do it consistently. So as a coach, I'm here to help my clients. We pray together, we see God together, and then I hold you accountable. You told me that this is what God has advised you to do, so I am not going to let you to shrink back into a box or let anybody else put you in a box. My job is to push you and champion you through this so you can see the fullness of the promise of God for your business.
Man, oh my gosh, that's so good. I think that it's so hard when we feel like we have been given this calling or promise from God, and he's really telling you that this is the direction, but then things shift so much in your life that you're thinking, okay, well, how come I'm not like still like I don't feel like I'm supposed to be heading in this direction anymore, but yet it was so clear before where God was calling me. And I'm going through that kind of right now, and just this idea of like God has called me in this one direction. However, he never said that it was going to be easy. Just because he calls you one way doesn't mean like all of a sudden this path is going to be simple, and you're not going to have any fear, you're not going to run into any walls or barriers. It's almost kind of the opposite when we follow God. It's like, okay, now I'm going to follow God, and all of a sudden all these things get in our way, but it's not necessarily God. It's like the devil coming in and saying like, no, don't do this because this is where God's calling you. And so all of a sudden we have all this fear. So is there a way that you help people? So I know that you have like this, you help people with accountability, but how can somebody, like, what are some tips, like practically, that someone can kind of start applying to their own lives when they do face these fears or barriers, when they in the path towards their calling or the direction that they feel God has summoned them to?
Oh, I love that. And I think that when God has called you to something, if it isn't big, I feel like it's not God because he leaves
Mm.
this big gap, and that gap is I like to call it like the God gap. That's where only he can show up. You can do
Totally.
so much on your own, but if you could do everything by yourself, then there would not be a need for God.
Oh,
And there's
definitely.
always a need for him. So he's given us these big dreams, these big ideas, this big vision, because he wants to show you that you and him together in consistent partnership is what's going to get you through to the other side, to what it is that he's showing you. And that, before I get into the tips, reminds me of a little bit about your story. And this year for me, my word for this year that the Lord had given me was more. And I was really excited because more sounds great. I was like,
Yeah.
yes, more money, more business. This is going to be great. But what I didn't realize was that more meant more responsibility,
Mm.
right? I think by February, end of February, I had more speaking engagements in 2020 than I did the entire of 2019.
Ah,
So that required me to show up on a more consistent basis. I started dating and I'm now engaged in
yay.
2020. Thank you.
Congrats.
Um, thank you so much. Thank you. And that required more of me learning how to balance everything. So more can sound beautiful, but it also comes with more responsibility. So when you're thinking about, your fears
Mm.
in walking in the fullness of who God has you to be, I would say the first thing that I love to remind people to do is really work on your mindset, because it's your mindset that can keep you back the most. So I like to do things like decree and declare, and I like to create affirmations.
Mm.
When we forget who we are, we should always go back to the word of God, because there are a list of things that God tells you who you are as a person. And my favorite thing to do is write them on sticky notes. I mean, I know I must drive my mother crazy. I've got sticky notes in the bathroom. I have them on her china cabinet. They're in my room. They're in my office. They are everywhere. They're in my planner, because I need the constant reminder of just who God says I am. And sometimes I need a reminder of who he is,
Yeah.
because we see God show up in everyone's lives, and we can applaud it and we can see the miracle that God is doing. But sometimes we forget that he can do those same things in our lives. He is a provider, he is a protector, right? He is the Prince of Peace. He will go to war on our behalf. And sometimes we forget that. So in order for us to get past our fear, we need to remember that God is there with us every step of the way, and remember the power and authority that he's given you to walk in.
Mm.
I say that we should be fearless, and I don't define fearless as being without fear. I define fearless as having fear and pushing past it and doing it anyway, because that is the time where you see God show up. Like, okay, God, you said to do this. I am breathing hard. My heart is in my chest. I feel like I'm turning red. But if you want me to stand up in front of this group of people and tell them what you said, I'm gonna do it. And literally, the rest is on you. And
Yeah.
you just go. And sometimes we think we have to take big steps. Sometimes it's consistent baby steps that get us there, right? So
Mm.
let's work on our mindset on a daily basis. Sometimes you need to go in the mirror and actually look at yourself and have a conversation and remind yourself of who you are. That may seem strange at first, but you'll get used to it. So do that, and then think about ways you can break out of your comfort zone. Little ways you can break out of your comfort zone every single day.
Mhm.
I remember when I just started public speaking, I did not like it. I mean, I literally turned red, and I started feeling myself always getting hot, and it would always start from my ears, and I would get hotter and hotter and hotter, and I wouldn't like it.
Oh,
But doing it a little more every single day made it a bit better. So now I can get up and I can speak, and I'm not feeling that nervousness that I used to feel, but it took consistent practice. We should never shy away from what consistency and discipline can do for us, especially when it comes through breaking through our fears, because it's practice. It's
mm.
just like confidence. You don't wake up being confident. You need to practice it. It's a skill. So consistency and discipline and getting over your fear and stepping out of your comfort zone requires consistent practice, but you can definitely do it. Say to yourself, you know what, this is the one thing I want to work on maybe for the rest of the year. Let's say, for example, let's say it is public speaking. Every day I'm going to get up and speak in the mirror. And then once a week, I'm going to make a public speak, I don't know, on my social media, even if it's only for 2 to 3 minutes, something like that.
Yeah. I heard this quote once that was like something about my 4-year overnight transition. So it's like, sometimes people see like your overnight success, but really it's been a process of consistency of years of doing these small little steps. But yet when people see it, they feel like you were just some overnight success. And so it's like the 4-year overnight success. And a lot of people have this idea that, well, to make it big or to be successful with and to reach your goals and your big dreams, your God-sized dreams, it has to be like this automatic transformation. But yet, like you said, I mean, it's simply just this breaking down and simply just taking those next steps. Like, what can I do today? And how can I then go ahead? Like, how can I reapply that over and over? So I'm kind of curious to know, like, how is it that someone can like break down like these God-sized goals into smaller steps? Like how do you coach people to do that, to then break these down into something that is a little bit more practical and applicable to your everyday life of things that you can do simply every day?
I really love that question because it's something that I do with the people that I coach all the time. And I'm going to say that we have to work backwards.
Mm.
Sometimes we start and we have the big goal in mind, and then when we think of all of the things that we have to do, all of a sudden we're overwhelmed, and it's more like, I'd rather go watch Netflix, maybe I'll do it tomorrow.
Definitely.
But if we put our goal at the top and work backwards until we get to daily steps. So let's say, for example, you're writing a book,
Mm-hmm.
right? So at the end, that's your end goal. You're writing the book, that's your end goal. So what are the steps you need to take to get to your end goal? So you need to, pick a cover page, pick a distributor, but you also need to come up with the contents of that book. Okay, let's break that down. Let's go with the side of the contents of that book.
Mm-hmm.
What do I have to do to write this book? I need to research, and I also need to start writing. Okay, let's break that down some more. In order for me to research to reach to the point where I can write, how much hours out of my day do I need to research that's equivalent to the time that I need to spend writing? Mm-hmm. So you can say that this book is going to be, break it down, say I have 10 topics, so maybe 10 chapters. For every chapter, I need to do an hour of research and maybe spend a few days writing. So how can you then implement that? You're going to go to your trusty planner. You're going to say, on Mondays, I spend an hour, for example, researching. And then on Tuesdays, Thursdays, and Saturdays, I spend 2 hours writing. And you just keep that and you build it up consistently. Because at the end of the day, you're going to get towards your end goal, but you're starting with the small things you can do today. So you're not sitting down with the idea that I need to write a book now. You're sitting down with the idea that I need to research this particular topic. The next day, you're going to say, okay, I need to write the introduction. The next day, you're going to say, let's see how I can work out chapter 1. You see what I mean? So you're thinking of the smaller goals. And then at the end, when you look at everything you've done, you're going to say, wow, I've actually written a whole book. And it just requires us to really look at what we can do on a daily basis, the small deliverable steps. If you're not a person who likes writing, but you want to write a book, set yourself a timer. I write for an hour a day, and when that timer goes off, I pack it up and put it away. I think too many times we get distracted by perfection. We're trying to wait for chapter 1 to be perfect before we move on to chapter 2. When we just need to write what we need written, after that, you can hire somebody to go through and find the spelling mistakes and look for the grammar and the punctuation. You can hire an editor, but until then, that book still needs to get from your head onto paper. So if we look at the things we can do on a daily basis and stop focusing on perfection, we can get farther. I think perfection is definitely a tool of the enemy to distract us in what we are called to do. None of us can be perfect because God is perfect. So if we are just spending all our days trying to be what only God can be, we'll never accomplish it and we'll be disappointed. Let's focus on doing what He's asked us to do and see how He guides us once we do that.
Yeah. I always find it very fascinating how there's all these good things in our lives, but when you focus on any one good thing too much, it all of a sudden becomes this idol. And like throughout the Bible, we're told that we're supposed to be called apart, we're supposed to be set apart, we're supposed to be excellent and really good at anything that we set our minds to, work at it as a working for the Lord and not for man. And this idea of working for God, you want to do it with excellence and with all of your might and power and abilities. But yet when we focus on that too much, it all of a sudden becomes a bad thing. And just as you were saying, it really can hinder us from actually achieving our God-given goals. And I know that happens to me all the time, and I hear from other people that happens to them as well. For example, I've been trying to rewrite my welcome series in my email welcome series right now. And I keep literally just staring at my computer like, what do I write? And because I'm too focused on writing the perfect email that I just don't even write anything. And I was talking to my husband about it last night, and I'm like, oh, I just want to have this like really awesome welcome series. I want to tell people what I'm about, but yet I'm like just not writing anything. And he's like, well, why don't you just write a really crappy email and just start from there and then tweak it? And I'm like, oh, well, I guess that yeah, I should probably do that. Like just get something out there. And it's funny because I mean, it's like this idea or this goal to have something done well with excellence. It's not a bad thing. In fact, it's in the Bible. We're called to be set apart as Christians, to do things with excellence. Yet when we focus on those things a little bit too much, it all of a sudden becomes this idol. It becomes bad. And
Yeah,
it's this tool that the enemy is now using against us. And there's so many other examples of that. Productivity in general can be an
yeah.
idol. There's so many different aspects of that. So I'd love to talk a little bit more about how you help people to truly apply their faith into these areas of their life. Like um, how are you helping people to view their goals and their businesses, and just, yeah, their life through God's lens, really?
Yeah, yeah. So with my clients, I like to say that when we're going through the part where we're writing down the vision that they've received, I want them to always make sure that, and I want whoever is listening to always make sure that it's coming from God.
Mm,
Because no matter how great it is, if it's a good idea and not a God idea for your life, it will never, never be successful. You will find yourself overworked and just upset and wondering why these things will never aren't working out basically for you. But that's because it's not for God's it's not God's idea for you right now. So first things first, I want to make sure with all of my clients, with anybody that I'm speaking to, that first, are we working on something that's God's idea or your good idea? And
mm,
then the next thing is the timing. Not everything on God's vision that He's given to you that you may see for your future is for right now. So, what's God's vision for you right now, and how can we work on that? And the way I like to go through that is really honing in on what somebody's purpose is.
mm,
And purpose is like my one of my favorite things to talk about, because I see so many times people who I feel are exhibiting signs of just being sad and unfulfilled and miserable. Why? Because they're not operating in their purpose.
yeah.
And because of that, my goal is that everybody I speak to, everybody I work with can be operating in their purpose so that they can feel fulfilled, so that they can feel that they're doing what God has called them to do. So I really spend time, even on my life coaching course, I spend time, which is called Created for More, I should say. We spend time really upfront on your purpose. Because if you don't have that sense of purpose, that sense of, okay, I know why I'm here now. God has gifted me with X, Y, and Z. It's hard for you to get the rest of the areas of your life together. And it's really hard for you to even get your business together.
Yeah.
So we really evaluate your purpose. And a lot of people love to say, they just wish they can find their purpose. But purpose is not really something that's found. It's something that's rediscovered because God has given you a purpose. You were formed in your mother's womb with purpose. So that means it's something that's already there. We just lose sight of it because the way that society is, they portray different versions of people to you, and you feel like you need to align yourself with a person, and that person's purpose for their life should be the purpose for your life. So it's not, and it's not it. So we really go through a list of questions in my workbook that goes through you actually reflecting on yourself. Like, what are the things that you love to do? What are the things that other people are always asking you to do? The things that keep you up at night because you're so excited to do them all night long. Like for me, for example, I'm excited to coach. I can coach all night. I get so wrapped up in it. I'm so excited. You do not have to bring me any food. I mean, some of my group coaching calls, we can go on for a few hours. And then when I'm done, and I shut down the computer, I'm just like, woo, I'm hungry. But where was that hunger when I was talking, when I was excited? Exactly. So I really want them to find their purpose. And actually, there is a rediscover their purpose. There is an episode on the Pray Plan Slave podcast solely on purpose. But we actually, I think we are on episode 59 right now, and we talk about purpose quite a lot because it's something that people struggle with all the time.
Yeah.
I remember my niece, who was 9 at the time, called me near midnight to ask me what her purpose was in life. I'm thinking to myself, you're 9. Like, your purpose is to play outside and have fun and enjoy being a kid. But that really shows me that if a 9-year-old is thinking about what her purpose in life are, and I have clients that are well into their 60s thinking about what their purpose in life is now, then there's something that's always happening, especially as women, because we're ever evolving, right? We're daughters, we're sisters, we're aunts, then we become mothers, we become wives, we're in the in corporate America or corporate wherever you are trying to run your business, you're trying to be basically every woman. And as you are evolving and growing and changing, how your purpose is exhibited will change with you. And I think that's what people get caught up in. They think the way that God did it in their 20s is the way that God's going to do it in their 30s, which is not necessarily true. The way your purpose is exhibited through you, like for me, for example, it may be a podcast right now, but in the next season of my life, it might be YouTube videos. In the next season, it might be multiple books, but I have to be flexible with what God is doing at that time. So let's look at the way your purpose is being exhibited right now, and then let's go through how we can make the daily changes that you need so that you're walking in your purpose clearly and confidently, right? So that you're showing up every single day, that you're communing with God every single day, so you can get the constant revelation and guidance that you need in order for you to walk in the fullness of who you're called to be.
Yeah. I do really think that God calls us to pivot at many different times throughout our lives. And I think sometimes pivots can happen really close together, but yet pivots can also happen years apart where you are kind of on one path and then God's like, okay, I really need you to start steering this way and do this. And yeah, I've have experienced different pivots in my own business and in my own life in many different ways. How do you think people can kind of recognize when God is calling them to make a shift and to change the direction of their business, maybe?
So there are certain things certain ways that God can move with you. I know for some people, when they start feeling the inclination that a change needs to happen, they sort of get this sense of peace,
Mm-hmm.
peace about the change. And God has given us the gift of peace. So if it's something that's causing you stress and confusion, we really need to spend time seeking Him to make sure it's right. But if it's giving you peace, like you think to yourself, yeah, you know what, it's time for this. I'm ready. I can let this part of this business go and move on to the next thing. Then go with that. Go with that peace. But also, I would say when you start being so tight and you don't want to be flexible with what God is telling you to do, you'll find a lot of knocking heads,
Mm-hmm.
right? You'll find a lot of things just start just going absolutely wrong. And you're asking God, where are you in this? Like, why isn't this going right? And He's saying to you, you're not moving on your own. So I'm starting to push you out. I
Mm,
have to push you out of your comfort zone, because we get in our comfort zone and we quite rightly feel comfortable. So we don't want to move. Who wants to move when they're comfortable? But
definitely.
we have to consistently come out of our comfort zone, because He's always calling us higher and higher and higher to new levels in Him. And once you're comfortable, quite frankly, if you feel like you're in a period of your life where you've been quite comfortable for some time now, I think you need to go back to God and say, God, I think I'm missing something. I've been in this space for about 5 years now. Nothing requires that much effort of me. I'm kind of on autopilot. So I know you must have something else for me, because I'm ready to go deeper and I'm ready to go higher in you. What do you have for me? Reveal it to me. Like, set up dates with God to
Yeah,
have these
I love
conversations.
that.
Set up business meetings with your CEO, which is
Yeah.
God, to have these conversations so He can reveal to you when it's time to pivot. Because
Mm,
sometimes it may seem like you're leaving something big in your life, a big series of, or maybe something big in your business, when what He has for you is 10 times better, but you're so stuck with what you think is successful in this moment. He's like, no, you need to get rid of this, because something else is coming and it's bigger, and you need to have space on your plate for it.
mm. That's so good. I love that idea of like setting up a business meeting with God, because really, especially when you have a business and you're a Christian, God is ultimately your CEO. He's your CFO. He's your everything. He owns your business. And I like that idea a lot of actually setting aside like a time and making a meeting to simply talk with God and ask Him, like,
Yeah.
okay, what is the next business move we're going to do? Do we have to make a pivot? Do we have to stop doing everything altogether? Because ultimately, He's the one that is going to be making that decision for us. Um, this conversation honestly has been like really, really great. I would love to know. So, this has been really awesome. And I feel like there will be a lot of people who are going to hear this and realize that they are in this moment where they need to figure out the next big move in their business or in their life. That 2020 really is this year that they need some personal or business coaching. If that person is listening right now, how can they get in touch with you to get that coaching? Or I know that you mentioned you have a course too, so either or all of those things.
Yes, definitely. So you can find me on my website. It is ShauntéSaphire.com, and that's ShaunteSaphire.com. And I'm sure there'll be a link to the website as
Yes.
well. And my Instagram is also at Shaunté Saphire. There you can find links to the podcast, information on my business coaching and my life coaching course, which is called Created for More, which I will be running one more time for 2020. It is a 6-week course that will take you through all the steps that you need. We talk about mindset, we cover purpose, we cover finances, right? Having your finances together in the way God has for you. We talk about becoming confident, letting go of your procrastination and your perfectionism. We really lay a strong foundation. So once the course is done, you are ready to move to the next step which is whatever God has told you to do over that time that we've spent together. And I really enjoy running this course, and I really love seeing the shift of the women who come and work with me. I usually get them at a point where they're like, oh, I just don't know anymore. I don't know what I'm supposed to do. I just know I need some sort of coaching. And at the end, they're executing it. They're in books, being featured on the cover of magazines. They're doing all these great things. And I'm just so honored that God would use me as this vessel that can guide them along this way. So definitely send me a DM. You can visit my website, or you can you can email me at hello@ShauntéSaphire.com. I really look forward to speaking with you, and of course to working with you as well.
Yeah, awesome. Well, thank you so much for your time today. I know that we will be in contact, and I'm excited for everything that God has in store for you in the future as well.
Thank you so much, Katie. I really enjoyed being here, and I look forward to speaking to you some more as well.
Take care.
Take care.